respiration. The second type of respiration is anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, as I said, happens in the absence of oxygen. After anaerobic respiration, very less amount of energy is being released. In anaerobic respiration, the glucose is being incompletely broken down. Incomplete oxidation of glucose happens in anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration you can see happening in some of the microorganisms like bacteria, yeast, or sometimes in the muscle cells of human beings. We will study about the anaerobic respiration in detail. First, let us consider the anaerobic respiration happening in an yeast. The anaerobic respiration which is being carried out by microorganisms, you call that as fermentation. Fermentation is a process in which the glucose is being broken down anaerobically. The glucose is being broken down. That process you call it as fermentation. Usually during fermentation, very less amount of energy, almost 2 molecules of ATP is being released after anaerobic respiration. You can see here in anaerobic respiration, the glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, is being first converted to a 3-carbon molecule, that is the pyruvic acid. As usual, it happens in the cytoplasm. And in the absence of oxygen, it is being converted to ethanol, which is a 2-carbon molecule. Ethanol is a type of alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. So the end product after anaerobic respiration in yeast, the end products are ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. Energy which is being released here is being used by the organism for its different metabolic processes. We will see the second type of anaerobic respiration which happens in the muscle cells. The muscle cells, the anaerobic respiration happens is during some sort of vigorous muscular activities. You might have experienced when you have any heavy exercise, like you run or you run for long distances, or you do some exercise with your hand, heavy exercises with your hand, that you get muscle cramps in your legs or in your hands. This is due to the anaerobic respiration in your muscles. All our cells, they need energy for doing its activities. This energy is being provided by glucose. Glucose is being broken down with the help of oxygen. But when our muscles carry out some vigorous muscular activities or some heavy exercise, these cells need more energy. So when they need more energy, more amount of glucose has to be broken. If more amount of glucose has to be broken, more amount of oxygen has to be reaching into the cell. But here, more amount of glucose has to be broken, and insufficient or lack of oxygen happens in your muscle cells. So when there is a lack of oxygen, the glucose, which has to be completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water, that glucose first gets converted to the pyruvic acid, and from the pyruvic acid, it directly gets converted to lactic acid. After lactic acid, the breakdown of the glucose stops due to the insufficient amount of oxygen. And this lactic acid keeps on accumulating in your muscle cells. I repeat, when you are doing any heavy exercise, when your muscle cells need more energy means more breakdown of glucose. More breakdown of glucose means more amount of oxygen has to reach that place. But our body tries by heavy breathing, they try to take in more amount of oxygen, but still due to the lack of oxygen or due to the insufficient amount of oxygen, the glucose, after getting converted to pyruvic acid, gets converted to lactic acid, and there it stops its breakdown. So slowly and slowly the lactic acid starts accumulating in your muscle cells, and the accumulation of lactic acid, it causes muscle cramps. So if you want to get rid of the muscle cramps, the incomplete cycle which has been stopped at lactic acid has to be completed. The lactic acid has to be further broken down, and this can happen when the muscle cells get more amount of oxygen. So when you have vigorous activities and you have muscle cramps, usually you take a bath with hot water, or you do massaging at that place where you have got a muscle cramps. So this will increase the circulation of the blood in that area. When the circulation of the blood increases in that area, it takes a more amount of oxygen to your muscle cells. When more amount of oxygen is being taken there, the incomplete cycle which stopped at lactic acid, it gets completed, and at last carbon dioxide, water and energy is being released. This is how you get a relief from the muscle cramps which had happened due to anaerobic respiration in your muscle cells. So these are the two types of respiration in human being. One is the normal aerobic respiration happening during its normal activities, and the second type of respiration, that is the anaerobic respiration, which happens in muscle cells only during heavy exercise. So we saw about the two types of respiration. One is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, mostly all the organisms, they undergo this aerobic respiration, and for this process, that's for the availability of the oxygen, they have to breathe in. For the availability of the oxygen, they have to breathe in. So respiration involves two processes. One is breathing and one is cellular respiration.